We will peg the back end of the bond market to gold July 4th of next year, the 250th anniversary of the country. So let's put it all together. So if you have synthetic demand created through the stablecoin movements by everything has to be backed by short-term U.S. Treasuries, and then that pushes rates down, gives demand to the Treasury synthetically to run the government, and the proceeds of those things go to gold, which raises it synthetically, and to Bitcoin. At the same time, you now peg it to the back end of the bond market, the 5, 10, 20, 30, and even 50-year Treasury. What does that do? Number one, it keeps rates low to stimulate the economy synthetically and gives synthetic demand for the U.S. Treasury. It takes all of that extra money and puts it towards gold and Bitcoin, devaluing the dollar, giving us the ability to slowly pay down our debt using Bitcoin. But now if you take gold and back it to the Treasury market on the back end, you have zero upfront borrowing costs. Look at it a different way, Jesse. I mean, I think what they're trying to do, if I'm going to guess, is to reshore manufacturing. And the only way you do that is to massively devalue the dollar. Look at Triffin's dilemma, which says as the world reserve currency, you will always be have a net deficit in global trade because your major export's going to be dollars. The world needs more dollars than we can provide through trade alone. And so countries over time have to sell their currency to buy ours, weakening theirs, strengthening ours against those currencies, that is. And so over time, manufacturing flows to where it can be produced the cheapest. Vice President Vance has come out on White House letterhead saying, no, we can't do this anymore. Triffin's dilemma, it has been a subsidy for the consumer. It's been a massive hindrance for the producer. It's a broken system. We have to move away from it. Even the knucklehead that was Jared Bernstein, a true knucklehead, if anyone remembers him trying to explain how treasuries were created, he was the White House lead economic advisor under the previous administration. He did write a report called Dethrone King Dollar, where he says the same thing. Being the reserve currency is now a hindrance rather than a benefit. Now, if you are trying to bring back manufacturing, you have to have a weaker dollar. How do you get a weaker dollar? You let gold go to levels that no one can imagine, and I think you will see that. Now, you could argue Bitcoin too, but take a look at USA Tether as an example. USA Tether, which is already Genius Act compliant, their CEO is a man named Bo Hines. Bo Hines was Trump's crypto czar until August. So the rules that Bo Hines was creating, he is now benefiting from. What is Tether doing? They have 12 billion in gold right now, more than they have in Bitcoin. About 8 billion they have in Bitcoin, according to their last numbers that just came out. They were just at the Beaver Creek Mining Summit as a company, Tether was, which is one of the biggest mining summits in the country. Again, talk about Chinese disintermediating the market. Now, Tether is. So let's just play this out. The Genius Act says that any time, and to your point, I think they are using the cryptosphere, if you will, to get to where they want to go.
If you want to rebuild manufacturing at home, one lever is currency. A devalued dollar makes U.S. exports more competitive abroad. Recent commentary suggests this may be a goal behind certain trade and monetary signals. Official policy rhetoric acknowledges the burden imposed by the reserve status, and some analysts argue that the U.S. could tolerate or even engineer a weaker dollar to shift the competitive balance back toward domestic production. In short, regain industrial strength by sacrificing some currency dominance.
And I know that sounds kind of crazy. I mean, it's like, here's how it works. So anytime money moves, it'll be backed by a stablecoin. It will move instantly, like Venmo or Zelle across a blockchain network, instant settlement, if you will, and it will be backed by U.S. Treasuries. Now, the interest on those treasuries is not transferable to the holder of the stablecoin. In other words, Tether gets to keep that interest. What are they doing with it? Well, they're buying more gold than they are Bitcoin, but they're buying Bitcoin too. Now, if you realize that Bo Hines is in this and kind of an advisor, what if they've worked out a deal with some of these stablecoin holders? Say, here's what you're going to do. Anytime a dollar moves across the globe, you're going to back it with U.S. Treasuries to lower the rates synthetically, not organically. You're going to do that. And then you're going to take the proceeds and you're going to buy Bitcoin to someday maybe pay down the debt. And you're going to buy gold, not to let gold go much higher just for the hell of it, but because rising gold devalues the dollar, right? And makes exports more attractive. Now, you mentioned backing U.S. Treasuries. I mean, we had Michelle McCory, who runs part of my YouTube channel, had Judy Shelton on again. I had her on 6 months ago, but she said the same thing to Michelle, that in no uncertain terms she believes, according to what Trump told her, that we will peg the back end of the bond market to gold July 4th of next year, the 250th anniversary of the country. So let's put it all together. So if you have synthetic demand created through the stablecoin movements by everything has to be backed by short-term U.S. Treasuries, and then that pushes rates down, gives demand to the Treasury synthetically to run the government, and the proceeds of those things go to gold, which raises it synthetically, and to Bitcoin. At the same time, you now peg it to the back end of the bond market, the 5, 10, 20, 30, and even 50-year Treasury. What does that do? Number one, it keeps rates low to stimulate the economy synthetically and gives synthetic demand for the U.S. Treasury. It takes all of that extra money and puts it towards gold and Bitcoin, devaluing the dollar, giving us the ability to slowly pay down our debt using Bitcoin. But now if you take gold and back it to the Treasury market on the back end, you have zero upfront borrowing costs.
Global reserve portfolios are shifting. Central banks increasingly anticipate that the share of gold in their holdings will rise, while the dollar's share is expected to fall. At the same time, rising gold purchases by emerging market banks and diversifying reserve strategies illustrate growing hedging against dollar weakness. That makes gold not just a safe haven asset, but a strategic one under a rethink of the currency reserves architecture.
You bring back your manufacturing at zero upfront borrowing costs. Yes, you have to pay it in gold in 20 or 30 years. Okay, fine. But the upfront borrowing costs are pretty much mitigated to zero. Bringing back your manufacturing, reshoring it, making all the new facilities that you need to make at zero upfront borrowing, and selling your goods into a massively devalued dollar. In other words, what I believe they are doing, look at all the crumbs, they're giving up on the reserve status in order to support the bond market. And by doing so, they would actually have a fighting chance, perhaps, to grow our way out of a problem. So I do believe that you will see. Now, people talk about, will gold be revalued? Look, that's not conspiracy anymore. It is actually in the Genius Act and says in 2026, they will revalue gold. Now, they could market to market, or maybe they go much higher. James Rickards is saying 24,000. He gets there by dividing the money supply into gold. Not sure exactly how he gets that calculation. It was a while ago when I listened to what he was saying, but the point of it is, you put gold at that level, it benefits every central bank on the planet, but it massively devalues the dollar. That's the point. The dollar in relation to gold would fall tremendously, and that alone would give us the ability to start selling our product to the rest of the world at a devalued dollar, giving up on the reserve status in order to reshore manufacturing, in order to have the ability to grow our way out. We are at a point in time, Jesse, where 60% of this country has a literacy rate below a sixth grade level. 60% can't read past the sixth grade level and have no college education. AI is already kneecapping entry-level jobs, and they predict in 3 or 4 years, half of those entry-level jobs will be affected by AI. So if you don't make anything, and AI is changing the dynamics of the world, and your population is less educated than ever, yeah, you got some problems. So I do think if there is any nobility in what he is trying to do, if I'm right, it is to bring back manufacturing. And the only way to do that would be to revalue gold, to devalue the dollar, give up on the reserve status, as Triffin's dilemma cites. And besides, all these countries around the world, they want to trade in their own currencies. They want to determine their own fate. They want the strength or weakness of their currency to mean something, settling imbalances in gold. And I think we're coming around full circle to gold always being the center of the monetary system. In the BRICS nations, it will be a vehicle to settle trade and currency imbalances. Here, I think it's going to back the Treasury market. To retain demand for the Treasury market at the same time, they are loosening their desire or relinquishing their desire to maintain world reserve status. So we'll see. That's my thesis, and I've been saying it for a long time, and I believe it. We'll see how it plays out, because if we don't, our next generation and the one after that is in massive trouble, because you don't live in the AI sphere or on Wall Street. Where are you going to make the money? And I think that's something people need to think about for a moment. And I do think he's trying to bring back manufacturing. This would be the only way to do it.
Beyond traditional currency and gold, digital assets and stablecoins are reshaping payments and reserves. Some of the largest flows into blockchain-linked monetary systems are backed by short-term treasuries. The proposition: money moves seamlessly globally, settlement occurs instantly, and the proceeds are deployed into gold or digital assets that erode dollar value. This synthetic demand for treasuries enables ultra-low borrowing cost and ultimately helps devalue the dollar while enabling new monetary plumbing.
I would like to just simply say that I think, this isn't even a broken system. I think we're witnessing its end. And because all the government debt is exploding and the deficits are out of control, and to your point, leaders refuse to or just are unable to fix the fundamentals and all the partisan fighting, I hope the Democrats realize that foreign nations no longer trust the United States dollar, and fearing inflation, to your point, sanctions, or default. I think at the same time, when you talk about here at home, Americans are being crushed by rising prices and falling real wages, but yet we're told everything is fine as Wall Street soars but Main Street struggles. It's like a K-shaped economy where, the rich are getting richer because they have assets, and the poor are getting poorer because they don't. And I don't know, I just think that when you realize that with constant de-dollarization and the BRICS Plus and the global trade shifting to local currencies, to your point, look, the world is preparing for a post-dollar era, and I think this system is on borrowed time, and that while the new one's being built, I hope that this goes beyond partisan, because if we don't and we slide down to that, that socialist type of agenda, we're in big trouble. This country's over, at least the way that all of us remember it. So it is a valid point. And there is no about being American anymore. It's either left or right, red or blue. And that divisiveness is something that has always concerned me. Valid point. Don't know the answer. Let's just hope that someone let's just hope that people realize that this is a very pivotal point. And if we go down that direction at a time when we're not manufacturing anything and our debt is out of control, the last $1 trillion was accumulated in 71 days. And a trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago. We're dead in the water if we don't bring back manufacturing, at least over time. Our children, our grandchildren are in trouble. So I don't know how to answer that question, Jesse, but it is a valid point.
Bring manufacturing back, and you must finance it. By linking production to cheaper borrowing via synthetic demand for treasuries and a devalued dollar, you can reshore industries at low upfront cost. The long-term cost may be denominated in gold or digital assets, but the near-term benefit is revived manufacturing and jobs. With U.S. government debt accelerating and deficits mounting, some strategists view this as a necessary pivot in order to regain industrial self-reliance and escape the trap of debt-financed consumption.
I mean, 100%. I think it's a very valid point. That it's like the Cantillon effect, right? And the Cantillon effect tells us that the inflation that we've seen fosters inequality and instability. It just simply means that those closest to the money benefit the most. They have assets, and the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. That's that K-shaped economy. And I think people need to really understand and think about socialism. My in-laws, came from Russia, and they talk about people don't understand what socialism truly is. They don't understand that it stifles and it kills the incentive to be creative, to outwork your competition, to produce better than someone else to be more competitive, make the product better and cheaper. That's what capitalism is. But the problem with it is you're right, is that we have created a system now where a lot of people, younger people, because of the system that has created far too much in the way of, I don't even know how to say it, massive inequality between those who have and those who don't. You have a lot of people who have become disenchanted with their future or the prospect of having, like you say, a home. I guess it's like being opinionated but not really being informed. And I think be careful what you wish for. But yeah, I think there are a lot of people who feel that way. Look, we let 20 million people into the country. These people aren't going to have jobs. Who's going to pay for them? Where does the money come from?
What does this all imply for ordinary people? With a weaker dollar, manufacturing returns, and new monetary regimes, entire segments of the population face disruption. Entry-level jobs replaced by AI, diminished literacy in sectors unprepared for automation, and widening inequality. Until domestic production and education systems adapt, the risk is a K-shaped economy. Asset-rich households thrive while others struggle. As global currency architecture shifts, the U.S. must decide whether to lead or be relegated to the margins of a post-dollar world.
When you look at AI killing entry-level jobs, when you look at the majority of the people in this country not being able to afford a home, and now interest rates on 30-year mortgages at 6 or 7%, not the 3% they were at before, it's a very valid point, and it's a scary, scary realization that you have more and more people. I mean, this is in essence the Cloward-Piven theory that I've talked about before, where in essence you're creating a serfdom of people who will never vote Republican again because they need the constant handouts. They need that socialistic kind of system. But that's not what made this country great. In fact, that's what will bring this country to its knees faster because we're broke. We're broken, we're insolvent. We have $38 trillion in debt, but that excludes Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, government, military pensions. We're almost $200 trillion in debt. So, it sounds fancy that government can come in and fix everything. But the truth of it is, not at this stage of the game. The government's broke and can hardly even keep its lights on, let alone the largest line item on the balance sheet is interest on the debt, more than military. And the Congressional Budget Office, which is bipartisan, said by 2031, 100% of all of the tax revenue would go just to pay the interest on the debt and mandatory entitlements like Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. And it's kind of interesting too, Jesse, like we're being told the whole reason the government has been shut down is something to do with tax credits on the Obamacare. And they show how all of the uninsured people has gone way down. Yet you need tax credits to make Obamacare work. How the hell does that work? If it's so affordable, an average family of four, the cost is about 30 grand right now for insurance. And so, you get to a point where they say all the uninsured has gone way down by like 20 some million people. I don't know, even more. But look at the increase in Medicaid. It's past that number plus another 6 or 7 million. So the point of it is that they've gone from uninsured largely to Medicaid, which is a government handout subsidy, which is massively indebted. And so you can't continue to spend money that you don't have, especially when you're trying to find demand for your U.S. Treasury market, where the rest of the world say, well, how are you going to pay your debt? Why would we buy your treasuries? You're massively indebted. You want to go down a road of more indebtedness and less production. How does that work? So again, it's not following the logical chain of events and where it would lead to. It would lead to the end of this country as we know it. And God forbid we go that way. But again, very valid point.